Hello, everyone. Welcome to, gosh, what day is it? Thursday? It's Thursday, isn't it? It's an Into Games event here on a Thursday, which means we can only be talking about something special, right? I'm Jonas, the Into Games community and events lead. A big hello to all of you watching live on the YouTubes or live from the LinkedIns, or maybe you're watching this from the future, in which case, do you still have what could I do you still have the flu in the future? A member of our chat has the flu today. I hope we've eradicated the flu in your future where you're watching this from. Today we're going to be talking about this is an exciting topic. It's always a really exciting topic. I find that every time we talk about anything to do with this, people really show up, people are really engaged. We're talking about narrative design. We're talking about games, narrative design, writing in games, but also quite particularly as well, like how to kind of build a portfolio, how to kind of build sort of career confidence out of small projects, the things that you can do in an early career or even pre-career to start taking footsteps into that world of things. So I hope you're all here for that. Bit of housekeeping before we start. If you are watching live in the chat, as always, we tend to try and do a Q&A section at the very end of the call. So if you've got any questions or you think, oh boy, I really want to, I want to type some words that someone will read out in the middle of this, please do contain that impulse just until we kind of get into the latter end of the event, just so that I can find all of your questions really easily in the chat rather than scrolling all the way back up through 20 minutes of history because my memory doesn't stretch that far. And if you haven't heard of Into Games before, we are an organisation, we're a charity organisation based in the UK where we're really focusing on trying to help people from low-income backgrounds or under-resourced backgrounds get the career in the games industry that they deserve, that they should be entitled to, especially because the games industry has just such poor social mobility when compared to a lot of other industries and creative industries around it. So if you want to know more about Into Games, there's a little link somewhere down in the description. You can learn all about the sort of stuff that we do. Coming to free events like this is one of those things, and in particular as well, we do these lovely courses where if you want to learn more about the games industry, you can sit down with a specific individual and kind of get some knowledge directly from them over 3 weeks. It's a 3-week courses. We call them sprints, and we're actually doing a sprint next month, January. Gosh, it's so soon, isn't it? Well, we're doing a series of sprints next year, but in particular, we'll be doing a narrative design sprint, which I'm sure we can talk about just a little bit later, because I'm done monologuing. I'm tired of it. I want to talk to somebody, and so I'm going to welcome onto the stage today's guest. It's Mark Ginbey. Hello, Mark. How
Hey,
are you
Jonas.
doing?
I'm good. Yeah. Looking forward to the talk. It's like a kind of overview careers advice thing for people just to, like just find their way through the industry. So it might look a bit kind of like basic, but we're going to like drill down into the various bits and cover quite a lot today, hopefully.
Nice. I think that's exactly. We haven't had a talk that's done that in a very long time, and I think our community are pre-games. Like a lot of the people are trying to get their foot in the door, and there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of frustration around
Hmm.
why isn't that door swinging open when people push really hard on it, and there's just a lot of frustration around like where is the door as well. Like there's so much to demystify. So I think chipping away with like small bits of advice is absolutely fundamental and really important. As someone, as Lucy Saskia puts in chat, it's hard out there. That's absolutely true. But before we get into the
Hmm.
talk, Mark, just a little bit about yourself. You've joined us today, and we started getting in contact because of one of these sprint courses that I mentioned. But
Hmm.
just a little bit about yourself first. Tell me a little bit about who are you. I see that you've got writer FuturLab under your name. Tell me a little bit more about what that is, what that means.
Well, most recently that's meant like a writing story for PowerWash Simulator, the career thing, and all the lovely DLCs that we've been doing. Like, just really lucky to be working on that. And then before that, just a series of indie games going back like quite a number of years now. Um, and I think this is something that I think is useful for people is that when you start out in your career, quite often it will be like short-term contracts and little kind of bits and pieces, and then gradually your name will get out there, and you'll kind of just start to pop up, and people will start to understand kind of what you can do as an individual. Um, So that's it really. Yeah, I've just kind of I've always worked in indie games and just a whole variety of things. Like little kind of mobile only puzzle games and you know narrative things, quiz things, all sorts of stuff.
Nice, nice. Well, today, we've called the talk like small games, big stories, writing for indie games. But as you say, a lot of that is really what we're connecting to is the idea that those small projects, those little bits of work that you can do in your, as I say, early career or pre-games career, they're all going to add up to something sort of greater.
Yeah, it feels like that's the time to make those kind of important decisions. Like quite often you're kind of like you get your foot in the door and then you can just feel your way around like once you're in and just try to just take things at the right kind of pace. But it's about that. I think that's a critical step. Once you're in, you're kind of in, even if it's kind of indie and you're floating around a bit. But yeah, I think as part of the narrative Kim's course, I think I'll be doing like a kind of a talk on non-story games, because you'd be surprised like how often as a writer you're employed to write on games that don't seem like they need any writing. So PowerWash Simulator is a good example in so much as it's just you're just there and you're just watching stuff. It's like, well, why does this need a story? But you put a story in there and it does it helps with the environmental storytelling. It helps with so many different aspects that just make it a more well-rounded game.
I've not actually got round to cleaning Cloud's bike in Final Fantasy VII, the DLC, but that
Yeah.
I am exceptionally excited for that. And part of me does kind of envision like as I look around the environment, I'm going to see a clear number of reasons why the bike has ended up this way, or why the
Yeah,
bike
yeah.
is in, why does it need dire emergency care from me with a power washer and not
Mm.
a trained engineer like Sid Highwind or Barrett, and things like that. So, yeah, it's really interesting to talk about. And you mentioned it by the way. So the sprint course. This is going to be a course that we're doing in January with Kim McCaskill. It's sort of a 3-week course, as I mentioned earlier. These take place in the evenings after work. They're sort of like 2 or 3 hours where you sit down with Kim McCaskill or whoever your sprint lead is, and you get to work on a brief, or you get to work on kind of a portfolio piece with that person. And Mark, you're joining that course as a masterclass host, so you'll be jumping in
Mm.
on one of the days, like a random, a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday, and you'll
Yeah,
have like a sort of a set piece of sort of guest lecturer style work to do, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. That's it.
Nice. Well, if you haven't, just if you're not aware of the sprint courses, again, there's a little link in the doobly doo that takes you to everything that Inter Games does in those areas. And if you're interested in the course, stay tuned, because whenever we do an event that's related to an upcoming course, just even in subject, we always make sure that there's a cheeky little discount involved as well. But we can flash that later, because right now I want to make your talk the subject of the hour, really. So. Mark, when you're ready, you've got your slides, you're on the screen. Take it away whenever you're sort of feeling comfortable, really.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say the narrative design sprint course is incredible. Just it's a really condensed course and it just really energizes you, if nothing else. It'll give you loads of knowledge, but it also just will fill you full of drive to kind of move on to the next step. Okay, yep, that's me with Nessie. Okay, so writing for indie games. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So yeah, like I was kind of saying already, like it's quite often indie game stuff will be kind of like piecemeal, but the kind of along with the downsides, there are like huge upsides as well. It's really exciting. Like quite often you'll be working on brand new IP. You'll be like the only narrative person in there, so you'll have like creative freedom over how that's kind of the story's going to be like expressed in that game. It might be a game that's got very kind of limited mechanics and they just want like kind of story elements, or they want kind of some kind of characterization, and it's over to you to do that. And it's really fun. Compared to like if you were to go for like straight into like a AAA type thing as a junior position, then you've got lower pressure here, so it's like a smaller scale project. There's less time to overthink it as well. You're basically just going to be thrown in there and then like, okay, right, let's go. And you've got direct communication. So the wonderful thing about indie games is that they're generally small teams. So it could be, just a couple of you. It could be like 5. It could be 100 people. But even 100 people is like manageable, kind of communications wise. So while you're kind of going around doing your duties, you're going to be talking to all these other departments and just learning from them. So you'll be communicating with design, who will be in charge of the mechanics and lots of the system stuff. You'll be talking to the art because, you know, story's always reflected in the art. You can be talking to the tech because systems need to be integrated and all that kind of stuff. And because it's a short dev cycle, so obviously, you know, with like AAA games, a game could go on for years and years, and you know, you could be in and out of there and never really know more than one kind of particular part of it. With indie games, quite often you'll find that you're there through the whole dev cycle. I'll talk about that in a last slide a bit more about how the dev cycle kind of breaks up. But those things are all really, really great. They're all really exciting. You're not kind of like a small cog in a big machine. You're an integral part of it that's been brought on for, you know, however much time. But there is also like a kind of like a bad and an ugly to it, in so much as you don't have the same kind of stability that you would at a larger studio. So quite often, you know, it'll be kind of short-term contracts. There'll be like a limited project budget for narrative. Some games might only realize very late on that they need any narrative at all. They might be quite happy just to write some stuff amongst themselves and then think, oh, you know, they have a panic at the last minute. Dead end. So you might find that your career kind of involves a bit of genre hopping. So, you know, if you're thinking about kind of indie games, even if it's just as a step up to AAA, quite often it's good. You know, in general, people kind of look down on generalists and stuff, but I think like from a narrative sense, I think it's a good idea to be a generalist and have that kind of flexibility, because you could be working on some bizarre simulator one week and then the next thing you're in an RPG, and then, you know, the next thing it's like some, you know, side scrolling thing. So it's good if you've got like the ability to just kind of jump around. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, you know, if you just really know something really well and you kind of just do a deep dive into one thing. But it does mean that, you know, you're going to be like precluded from certain opportunities. Minimal resources, yeah. I mean, everybody's kind of in indie games, at least at first, is working on like a shoestring budget, and they're just trying to keep everything as tight as possible. And that can feel stressy, but it also feels really exciting. It's just like, right, okay, you're in there, just focus mode, let's go and do it. And then the ugly side of indie games is just you can. It's always tricky with these things, with narrative especially. I think like if you're programming or design or whatever, then even then I think you have a really good basis. If you come out of a degree or something like that, then you can theoretically come out with what you need to go into a junior position. Whereas with narrative stuff, it's tricky because it always feels like it's a kind of leap of faith, right? So just like, I can do this job, you know, you just have to believe me, or you just have to be convinced by my portfolio, you know? So quite often you find that you just have to just do some kind of low or no paid stuff at first, just to kind of get your name out there, or just to kind of get the opportunities rolling. So yeah, you can find that it's a kind of harder career advancement. So if you're in like a big studio, then obviously you've got like multi-layers to the whole narrative department. Whereas in indie, you know, you'll be the only narrative person more than likely. So, you know, you might like find that job just ends, and then it's like tricky to kind of, you know, find that advancement other than going into AAA, because most studios simply won't be big enough to kind of facilitate that. And then the other one is the game remains obscure, so you can get really excited about this. You can pour all your, you know, heart into it, and you can think, okay, I've got this amazing story in the back of my head about like a beetle that manages to find their way to Mars and just reestablishes life on the planet. And you've just written the whole thing out, and it's incredible, but it just doesn't pop, you know. But you know, it'll still go on your portfolio, so there's that. Right, so before your first job, I know this is kind of like very kind of basic stuff, but I don't think it's kind of, I don't think you can emphasize enough like how important it is to read novels while you're still like just doing your thing and trying to get a narrative job in games. Just the kind of phrasing, the word choice, the flow, the perspective, and just the kind of slow hypnotic, just well, flow again of a novel, of reading the whole thing. You know, you can take time to consider why characters are making their decision, and there's no rush to it. There's no other thing to do other than just to read and then reflect. So, you know, reading wise, choose like a challenging selection of books, you know, books from people with like different backgrounds and different perspectives and different ideologies and that kind of stuff, you know. And And every character that you read about is developing your empathy, and you're going to be learning new perspectives, and you're going to be challenging your beliefs. And that's just a really wonderful thing to do. Yeah, there is a 3 R's writing. That's fair enough. That's a fair cut. Writing wise, honing your skills. So yeah, for this, I'd say as far as kind of honing your skills is concerned, um, don't just think in a kind of narrative kind of prose way, but hone your skills in every way that might be useful as far as like a career in games writing is concerned. So that's going to include writing cinematics, so getting an idea of how like script writing packages work, so a final draft, that kind of thing, and just how how that flow differs, and how narrative is expressed and communicated in that medium. And then of course the other one is just non-linear software. So get yourself Twine or Inky or something, and just get messing around with non-linear stuff and see how naturally or unnaturally it comes to kind of constrain the flow of narrative, and how you can just create these elaborate pathways, and how you can create kind of meaningful choices, and then play them back, even if it's just you yourself. If you've got like a community of people, then share these like mini games with, like Twine is just HTML, so you can just immediately ping that to a friend and they can just go through and play it, and they can kind of give you feedback on how important the choices felt, if there was an interesting array of choices and that kind of stuff, which is what you're going to be dealing with non-linear stuff. Really, it's just making those decisions meaningful to the player. Research wise, play games, just play lots of games, which obviously you'll do anyway. And you get, if you go onto Steam and you just like trail through there, then you can kind of understand the market, and you can get an idea of where things are kind of popping up and what things are getting popular, and what things just don't seem to be that popular anymore, outside of that big like AAA bubble. Analyze the mechanics, and just think, well, what is it about this game that I find so engaging? Like, why have I just suddenly, sunk 3 hours into this thing, and also just think, well, what could I bring to this? Like you're playing this and saying, okay, what would I do? So, if I say, okay, I like two things, I like a GTA 5, right? And I like farmyard simulators. So what if I mix those, and then maybe that's how they came up with Goat Simulator. They're thinking, right, okay, I want to just go and create mayhem, but I also want to be a goat for the day. So, it's just when you just start to think about, okay, what do I like? What would I do with this game? And you start creating all these weird kind of hybrids and stuff, then quite often you can kind of generate ideas, even if that's just for like a Twine prototype or something. And of course, also you can discover great writing by other games writers, and you think, well, is that what's kind of hooking me? Is this saving the mechanics, or is it working with the mechanics? If it's working with the mechanics, how? How are they doing that so beautifully? Yeah, so these are the 5 things basically that I think you need to break into the industry. A portfolio, I don't know why I've got full stops on there. Portfolio, modding games, networking, an internship, and game jams. So for a portfolio, kind of what to include in a portfolio. I think some of you might already know this if you've been on like a course before. I think they do kind of go over this kind of stuff. But like a character biography, right? So somebody relatable but interesting, and if relevant, showcase your mastery of genre. If that's if you feel very strongly that you kind of, before with the writing, when it's kind of like know yourself, know what your strengths are, and what you're maybe not so good at, and what genres you might suit, because obviously there's a lot of different games out there, and you might be more suited to some than others. So the more you write, the more you kind of get self mastery of that kind of stuff. And I feel like I've skipped over quite a lot there actually. And yeah, so with your kind of character biography, then write somebody relatable but interesting. If relevant, show your mastery of genre. So if you really like, a particular genre of games, then drill down into that. And if you can, like, give the character an interesting flaw, just immediately just draw everybody in with the story. They kind of read it, go, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's not just this kind of person. They've also got this particular thing. Maybe they're like a bouncer or something, and they just they just overshare, or they just really like that kind of engagement with people, and they just hanker after earnest chat, and they just can't get it because nobody really wants to do that. That's a terrible example. A dialogue example, so conversation with dramatic flow which showcases characterization and understanding of social dynamics. So yeah, so that's the same. So just have like a couple of characters chatting, but they're not just chatting. You know, they're engaging with an immediate situation that needs working out, basically, and they're working for it together. So there's a through line from kind of narrative sense, but there's also a sense of individuality and personality about each of those characters. Like it's interesting, not because they're necessarily responding to something in a particular way, but because they're responding, well, not to something, yeah, in a particular way, but in a way that's unique to them, that's unique to their personality. World building. So this is something that you'll do kind of early on in the development of a game. And it's a really useful thing to have in your portfolio, because it kind of showcases that in that kind of pre-production phase of stuff, you're going to be a really useful person to work with. So for the world building thing, then you want a kind of description of a world or place that immediately makes the reader want to go there. So again, I think a lot of times there's kind of an inclination to do something not necessarily cozy, but something kind of quite safe with the world building. And I think all of these are an opportunity to actually do something different, and something that really has a lot of kind of conflict that's already built in there. You know, so maybe it's a fantasy world, it's a fantasy kingdom, but it's a fantasy kingdom on the very edge of something absolutely disastrous. You know, and there's something about the citizens there or the situation that makes it unique and interesting, and gives this story something that people haven't read before. So for the Barks, yeah, this is another thing that's really great, because if you're lucky enough to kind of get a job in a big studio, then it might be that actually this is kind of your job for a bit. If you're going to be working in indie, then it's going to be an important part of your job, but maybe not your entire job. So for this, it's about kind of like just writing multiple NPC lines for the same events, illustrating your boundless imagination and access to a thesaurus. So really, it's just about saying, oh, I can think up a person that's got like an interesting personality, and I can find a nice way to flip it so that this situation, whilst it satisfies the same conditions within the game, it provides a variation. So it's a weird kind of thing where you have to provide a safety net, but at the same time stop it becoming irritating because people are in the same situation. So yeah, I mean, and quite often you need like a lot of excuse me, you need a lot of variations for those kind of things. So it's really useful if you can like demonstrate your ability to kind of conjure that variation in an interesting way. Cutscene. So yeah, write yourself a cinematic of like an incredible dramatic moment somewhere in a universe that's interesting to you. And you know, demonstrate that you understand the kind of formatting on a kind of basic level of how kind of screenplays work and that kind of stuff. And even like a relatively low budget indie game may still have, you know, some kind of like a motion comic or something, you know, that's just got very limited moving elements in it that still represents a cutscene. It still, you know, provides some kind of like lore background before you get into the actual gameplay. So it's a really useful thing to demonstrate, even if you feel like, oh, you know, I don't necessarily want to apply straight for like a AAA game that you might associate with cutscenes. You still find them all over the place. So portfolios standing out. So I call this the Biaoka system. I don't really, right? So brevity, basically just show that you can say more with less. So yeah, I think it's just awesome if you can, because we all love our own kind of words and that kind of stuff. We all get kind of carried away, but always think with any of these things, like, what's the minimum that I need to showcase this? Even if it actually is somebody who just talks too much, you know, like you can still express kind of brevity with that. Ingenuity. Okay, so demonstrate your problem-solving ability within your samples. So I think this is really important. So you know, it might be tempting to say, okay, this is Colin. They're an ingenious programmer from Washington State. They can solve any problem. It's just incredible. Just give it to Colin, and you might as well just say goodbye problem. But if instead you just say, okay, right, let's just write a cutscene where Colin's got the most difficult programming issue that anybody's ever encountered, and these are the steps that Colin takes to overcome it, then you've demonstrated your problem-solving ability, and someone will go, okay, wow, this is somebody who can actually give themselves a genuine narrative problem and write their way out of it. Yeah, authenticity. So show us that you understand people by writing kind of authentically, but also write about what you know and what you understand. So, kind of dazzle with the kind of nuance and the clarity, which is a weird thing to kind of mix. But yeah, I think it's a case of like, it's the same with the originality one as well. Like, show us your voice, kind of not what you think we want to hear. So don't kind of second guess what is necessary for that portfolio. Write what you feel kind of really passionate about, and just get all that stuff out on the page, and just blow people away with the fact that this is your brain. So clarity. Too much word on the screen is just terrifying. Apologies if I've done that here, and in the ultimate display of hypocrisy. But yeah, like if you can insert images or terrible graphics like I'm doing, just to break up the space and just improve the readability, like help the reader, whether that's like a dev or a recruiter, whatever, just navigate their way through the pages and just find their way around. And if you've got a friend who's in art or design or something that can maybe help you with that, in return for some amazing writing on something they're working on, then by all means employ that symbiosis. Adaptability. Mirror your portfolio to the job studio that you're applying for as much as possible. I know this sounds like a real like too much effort, and how can we do that when we're applying for so many jobs and stuff? But I'll kind of come on to that in the next page, I think. But I think like a recruiter, this is a really tricky thing, because you might have a recruiter and they just say, okay, I'm putting you forward for lead writer on Spider-Man 12. Here we go. And you're like, right, okay, just ping it out. But I think if you just say, right, let's just think about what this job is, and let's just make sure that they're not going to read stuff that's dead to them, because even if it's gone for a recruiter first, it will still end up being read by a dev, and that dev, when they read that portfolio, will want to be seeing their game mirrored in what you're providing one way or another. So as I think I'd say here, oh, that's weird. Slight panic.
What's not happening?
Is there, have I gone through like 10 slides at once? Yeah, it's all got in a funny order.
Oh. I can see 18 slides in total.
Strange. Right, I'm just going to talk from here, I think. Oh, I don't know. Okay, sorry for that derailing of the chat. It might be that I haven't included that. Apologies for that. Okay, yeah, no, the next one is modding. Sorry, Jonas, I've yeah. Right, so modding is a bit of a kind of like a funny one in the games industry, because obviously it's something that can massively derail somebody's game, but it's also something that just brings games to life, and is just an absolutely amazing thing, that's just underpinned by a really passionate community. So, for me, modding is a way in. If it's not necessarily like a way into a studio, although it might be, it's definitely a way into you understanding like what your strengths and weaknesses are, and what your skill set is as a narrative designer, more than a writer, to be fair. With with writing, you can be fairly like tech illiterate, but with narrative design, it's generally, you want to have some kind of coding chops. You want to be able to work in engine, and that kind of stuff. So modding in that sense, although it's more of a kind of like systems design thing, or even like a tech programming thing, if you do get into modding, I mean, I must admit, so for me, my modding experience basically extended as far as just changing a few of the values in like Total War text docs, just so I could make like Highland Clansmen run faster than horses and that kind of stuff, you know. But if you are like really into it, then you know you're showcasing that you understand the principles of system design. You can think holistically, and you've got useful skills for conceptualizing narrative delivery systems, which are, you know, obviously the bedrock to an awful lot of games. And you're also, you know, you're illustrating in-depth knowledge of the game's mechanics and the game's art. All those things, you know, you have to really love a game in order to mod it. So yeah, you're selling your in-game in-engine and your coding chops, and you're also, you know, you're part and supported of like a passionate community, which does include community managers, and it's a showcase for you to just show what you can do, you know, even if it's not necessarily story-wise. So networking. Networking is obviously scary for writer introverts among us, but it is also, unfortunately, a necessary part of things. And I must admit, I'm guilty. I don't do it as much as I should. But so LinkedIn gets your name out there. The only thing I'd say is like the industry's smaller than you think. So, you know, link your portfolio, be professional, and just make sure that people remember you for the right reasons, and you know, and you just be positive and on brand, and just recognize the fact that you are a brand. Like as soon as you're there and your profile's there, then everything that you put out there becomes, you know, the public face of your brand. But it's really useful. There's lots of people out there that you can just link in with and just say hi to. People will always want to say hi. Discord, obviously you can join game dev servers and form alliances with other people. You can, you know, hopefully like form small teams and get making. Games conferences, if you can, if you live anywhere near like a national games conference, then usually you can grab yourself like a free pass. So even if you can't like afford the megabucks for like a day or a conference ticket, then you should still be able to get like a free pass, which enables you to mingle. And there will also be like free talks as well as part of it. So the developed one, which is local to me, they have like free roundtables and that kind of stuff, and they do free passes. So you just have to register for that, and then you go and pick up your pass on the day one, and then you're free to just mingle and just go around and just have a chat to people as you find them, basically. So game jams, I think we're going to come to that next. And local meetups as well. Just trawl socials and look for evidence of developer meets that might be near you. And if there aren't any, then maybe just like put some stuff out there and just see if there are actually people, if they're not actually working in the industry yet, then maybe they want to, and you can start one, like fill that gap. So internships. So I'm not like familiar with this myself. I've never like been involved in an internship as an indie person, but I recognise like the importance of them. You know, so the pros are that you're going to experience studio life straight away. You're going to meet mentors that you could potentially have a career-long relationship with. You're going to contribute to amazing games because the studio is likely to be a certain size in order to kind of facilitate internships. The cons could be that it's hyper competitive, and it's not necessarily guaranteed to lead to anything. It might be paid, it might be unpaid. And the other thing is that just for an internship, you will be expected to hit the ground running. So only apply when you're ready. So yeah, I think that's important for like a lot of these things, is that although it is, you know, like there's so many different games and it's very disparate, it also is also like quite a small industry as well. So it's very kind of tempting to think, okay, I'm gonna apply for this, or I'm gonna do that, or I'm gonna take this one and that kind of stuff. You know, especially when you're first starting. I think I wrote like a few things that, looking back, I think, well, actually, I wasn't really the best person for that, but you kind of do it anyway, and you kind of live and learn. But apply when you feel it's, you know, like a good fit, and when you're ready. That goes as much for like a small like indie opportunity as well as like an internship or something like that. So game jams. So I'd say game jams is the same as like just going away and making a game with a team that you've kind of met somewhere, or just got from maybe another game jam, or just networking some way. Um, so what's great about a game jam? Well, you're making a game, and it's just incredible. Like I cannot recommend game jams enough. Like if you've never done a game jam, please do a game jam. Um, it's just incredible. They are obviously stressy things, and they're intense, and it's long hours and that kind of stuff generally. It's a lot of pizza and that kind of stuff. Um, but you start with nothing and you end with a finished game, and it's just amazing. Actually, I think like some games obviously like go over months and that kind of stuff, but for those kind of like intense ones, it might only be like a couple of days. Whatever it is, you're going to start with nothing and you're going to end with something. Um, and that's just brilliant. You've got a game under your belt straight away. You've gone to a game jam and you've come out with something brilliant. You've experienced collaboration, right? So in a micro sense, you've felt like what it is to be in the studio by working with others towards like a shared vision. So you're not all going to have the same responsibilities. You're going to definitely have like a coder in there. You're probably going to have like an artist and things, maybe designer. It depends how big your team is. And then you're going to be kind of narrative stuff. And then hopefully you'll have an audio person. You might even have somebody who's going to do some VO and that kind of stuff, like all these different things. And they're all going to have like these different ideas on how you're going to do this. And you're going to have to front up and just say what you feel really strongly about, and B, just digest the stuff that isn't going to fly with everybody else. And that is, like studio life, is basically just like, right, okay, I've got 100 lines of absolute genius. I just need you to green light this. And then it comes back with a great big red line for it. And you're like, oh, okay, and then you get the notes and you're like, oh, actually, yeah, no, fair dues. That was a red line situation. And going to a game jam is a very micro version of that, so you have that kind of the fact that you just have to collaborate and just share that vision with everybody else. And then you're learning from others as well. So while you're there, the designer's doing their thing, the coder's doing that, and it might be that you're picking up a few kind of tricks and things. You kind of learn how they're using plugins and importing and doing all this kind of stuff, and just working in engine, and also that they might be from completely different backgrounds, they might have completely different perspectives, and it's an opportunity to learn from every individual that you're working with. And you develop self-mastery as well. So game jams are incredible fun, but they're also very intense. They're very stressy, which is a really good test of us. It's a good test of just where your limits are, and where potentially you just have to just say, well, I'm just going to walk away now. And I don't mean forever. I mean like just take a breather. Just say, okay, I'm just going to go outside, get some air, come back and do your thing, and then just just learn that kind of part, that self-managing part of game development. And also, just as you're going along, you'll also learn where your strengths and weaknesses from a narrative point of view might be. So you're there the first morning and you're like, okay, this entire narrative system is sorted out. I can see in my mind very clearly how this story is going to play out. But then when it comes to kind of micro details of like, oh, where's the nuance in this particular part of the story, and how can I bring this out? Then it might be that you kind of struggle more with that. And then you're thinking, actually, maybe I'm better suited to narrative design, where I can see how the flow of story is going to work, and I can see the broad strokes of how the plot might develop. But when it comes to the kind of micro stuff and the small kind of details on a word by word basis, maybe I'm not so good at that. Or maybe you think, oh wow, I don't know what I'm doing with this system stuff, but I know how to bring these characters to life. And then it might be that you're naturally more kind of games writery than you are narrative designing. Although to be fair, like I'm sure you've heard lots of times before, with like small studios, narrative designing and games writer is a bit of a grey area. And then last but definitely not least, it's like probably the most important thing really is just you're going to make friends. So the connections that you make with game jams, you might be like, okay, we only got like 2 days on this, but actually I think there's something there that's like a real kernel of a great game there. Or maybe you had a game jam that lasted several months, but you only had like 20 hours or something to work on it, and you knew what that game could be. You knew how you'd learned by this point how to limit the scope of the game to be achievable in that time, but you could also see kind of what it could be if you just had enough time. Well, once the game jam's over and you've got these amazing new friends who can help you make a game, then you've got the time, make that game. Well, hopefully you've got the time. but what you have got is you've got the fellow devs who can help you actually realize that game. Oh yeah. So this is apologies. This seems to have, or has it? Oh no, sorry. I think it's my brain. It's basically my brain. Yeah. So yeah, when applying for jobs, I've kind of said it already. Tailor your cover letter to the studio. Or yeah, as well as the portfolio. So this is a thing. So the industry is hyper competitive and obviously currently on fire. So a quick skim through the cover letter to find no reference to the work they're doing is a quick way for the recruiter or the dev or lead to sort the wheat from the chaff. That sounds kind of um, doesn't sound very nice, does it? But it is it's the reality of it. So, if there's just one thing you can do is just spend a little bit of time looking at the studio and what they've done, what their history is, what their kind of genre of games is, and just putting a little bit of thought into how you can bring that out in your cover letter. So straight away they can think, oh, okay, this is somebody who does actually want a job here. It's not somebody who's firing out 30 applications a day. There's somebody who genuinely wants to work on our at our studio. Yeah, and like I said before, don't let recruiters put you, if you're lucky enough to kind of like send a portfolio to a recruiter, or you get approached by a recruiter on LinkedIn, for example, and they're like, oh, I think I've got something for you. Do you want me to put you forward? And you get really excited. You're like, yeah, of course. Do it. And then you send it over, and then you think, actually, maybe that's not the right job for me. Maybe it's either just flat out unsuitable, you just can't write that kind of thing or design that kind of thing, or maybe it's just at the wrong time. Maybe you feel like, actually, in a couple of years, I think I'm going to have the skill set that will take me there, and I'll hopefully have like a few like freelance gigs under my belt and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to give like Larry a shot then or something, but right now I don't feel like I'm ready. People can remember seeing like the wrong thing at the wrong time, so it is worth just thinking through, have I got a shot at this one, or am I better off just waiting for the right thing to come along, and in the meantime just kind of get your chops together, maybe like keep developing the game that you've got going on with your fellow devs. Rejection is inevitable, and yeah, the big thing is that you might not, it's really, really infuriating, especially when you get to the stage where you're doing writing tests and stuff, and you're like, surely at this point I'm going to get like a personal response, and you end up getting ghosted. You've just spent like 10 hours writing something. And I'm not going to defend studios here, absolutely not, but it is hyper competitive, especially narrative. Like there are few narrative positions in a studio of a large size, so it might be that studio is overwhelmed and it just isn't possible for them to personally reply to everybody. So just don't let it get you down. Like, everybody gets rejected in this industry, especially narrative, quite frequently. So yeah, just take it in your stride and just say, okay, that's fine. That wasn't right for me anyway. I'm going to get on and I'm going to do this. I'm going to apply for this one, or I'm just going to work on my chops. And following on from that, kind of quality over quantity, I would recommend this. I don't know about others, but I would prioritize applications for positions and studios where you feel like you're a good fit. So, their ethics are similar to you. So, if you feel like that kind of the personable side of things. So at FuturLab, for example, we're very like people-y, so it's really important that there's like a social fit amongst everything, because we're developing, like a cozy game basically. So it's important that everybody kind of fits in with that. And just in terms of like writing and stuff, it's like, well, does this studio produce the kind of stuff that really play to my strengths, bearing in mind that this could be your first job or one of your first jobs. In a hyper competitive market, it's likely that they will be receiving applications from people who are more suited, in which case just head for the ones where you feel you're a really good fit. And then before you send it off, just double check that you've covered every bullet in the brief somewhere on your application. So everything they're looking for, you can say, yep, that's there, that's there, that's there, and that's there. And you've left nothing on the table. And then lastly, like, be yourself. So, in the age of kind of AI written applications, a really genuine, considered tone, I think goes like a long way. And then yeah, this is just another thing. It's just like, just don't compare yourself to other people. In every industry, there are these kind of geniuses to whom things come naturally, and you would just always think, oh, they're more talented than I am, and they probably are. So, like a strange personal example is that it's not related to games necessarily, but I was taught guitar by somebody called Guthrie Govan, who's this amazing jazz guitarist, and he's pretty much like the best guitarist in the world. I didn't know that at the time because I was a kid and everything, but you kind of look at him and you hear him playing. Well, you know, when I would go to a lesson, I would hear him playing, and I would think I'm never going to get there. Like I've got no chance to kind of to become like a professional musician or to become good at the guitar. And that's just, it's no way to think. You know, you have to just say, okay, those people are like inspiring, and I can like just absorb what I can and know that they're going to be out there somewhere and they're going to be kind of doing their thing. Like it's not like don't see games or anything like this as a kind of like a Mozart and Salieri situation. You know, it's like there are always going to be these people who are outliers and who are just brilliant, and their success is almost inevitable. But there's still plenty of opportunity for people who just work really hard with the talent that they've got and just really apply themselves, and are just really open and really lovely people. So yeah, I just thought I've apologies if anybody seen anything like this before, but I just thought I would just take the opportunity just to go through what example first jobs in the industry might be that aren't necessarily in narrative, because there's a huge benefit, I think, to just applying for jobs on a personable level that aren't necessarily narrative jobs, but do allow you to progress the narrative. So two examples are QA and runner. And so QA might feel like, well, you know, do I want to do that? You know, especially if you feel like, oh, okay, I'm behind anyway. You know, maybe you're a bit older than what you consider to be like an age for a kind of entry level job. Don't worry about that. Just get your foot in somewhere and just find your way from there. Become like a good like cultural fit for a studio. So QA, so yeah, you get to experience the company culture, right? So you're immediately thrown in the day-to-day living of being a game dev, which is incredibly exciting and amazing. And my numbering has just gone, it's just dropped off. Apologies for that. So number 2 should be like understand systems and software holistically. So this is the amazing thing, is that when you're QA, you're just going through these things, you're like bug testing, and you're getting to know the game amazingly well, because you're working your way through all these kind of systems and mechanics and everything else, everything that go wrong with the game. At some point, you might be expected to test, right? So probably nobody is going to have a better holistic understanding of that game than QA, and you're going to know that. So if at some point there's like a narrative position that comes up or something, then you're going to be like, right, okay, I know this game inside out. I am absolutely ready for that. I'm going to like send them a portfolio with writing that just reflects this stuff, and let's go. So yeah, so you get a complete understanding of the game, and you get to sell yourself to the company by demonstrating professionalism, utility, and enthusiasm. And the same with the runner. So with the runner, obviously there's less of a you know, like moment to moment game dev situation there. You know, you're kind of like you're front of house, and you're running and stuff. But even so, like, you're still networking with these devs. You know, you're still able to explore options and opportunities beyond the position that you're doing, and you can demonstrate professionalism and culture fit, and just pace your career development and make a decision when you're ready. Like, it's both of these games are an incredibly common way to advance in the games industry. Lots and lots of people who are very high up start in one of these two positions, and they get in there and they get chatting to people, and they engage, and they're interested, and people are like, yeah, okay. You know, you'll probably find that if you get these jobs, people will come up to you and just say, well, where are you going? You know, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? That kind of stuff. Example first jobs narrative. So yeah, it might be that you're kind of lucky enough to to get a job that's absolutely what you want to do is in narrative, and that might be like a junior narrative designer. And in this case, you're likely to be hired for your portfolio, but it will also incorporate some networking or internships. So both of those things are important. It is a highly competitive, but you do become part of an established hierarchy within a large team. So you feel supported and you feel like there's like opportunity there, and there's a team that you can talk to. But in the same sort of way as the non-narrative ones, you experience studio life from day one. And yeah, you do get that support and you get that company structure. So it's kind of exciting to feel like, oh, okay, there's somewhere to go here straight away. And as a freelance writer, again, you're going to be hired for your networking and your portfolio. It's likely to be for an indie studio, and it will be like a fixed term work. So the income will be unreliable, and it might be that it's quite high pressure because you need to hit the game running and deliver immediately. So, somebody would just say, oh, okay, it might be like Fiverr or something, and somebody's like, right, okay, I need a story for this game I'm doing, and it's like 500 lines or whatever. Can you like design the doc and then write everything and blah blah blah? And you're like, oh wow, okay. So there's no cushion here. There's no mentor for the whole thing. It's just you and what you have to do, which can be scary at first, but like everything else, just back yourself. And the other thing with freelance stuff is because it generally is these kind of small projects, most of these ones will be a variant of genre of some kind, which will still constitute an original IP. And that's really exciting because quite often you might get a team and they're like, okay, we're making this, whatever it is, just like a side-scrolling 2D platformer or something. And these are the basic mechanics. And then you can be like, oh, okay, have you thought about this? And then you can kind of like suggest something that might actually be valuable to the development of the thing and spin it into a whole new area and create like an IP that even they weren't aware of. Yeah, so this is kind of what I was saying. So you've landed like a non-narrative job in like QA or runner. Now what? So yeah, just demonstrate genuine utility, understand that this is your job and that you have plenty of time to develop your career. Even if you feel like you don't and you feel like you're further down the road than you feel you should be and you're behind in your career, like it's fine, and there's no job that can't feed into your writing and your understanding of story as well, and you're there to kind of soak stuff up, and you can still do that stuff. So you can ask to join any narrative related Slack or social channels, and they can say no, you're not a member of the team, but hopefully they'll say, yeah, why not, just just lurk in here and say hi or whatever and just see how we work with flow. And yeah, just be patient and let the co-workers know that you're keen to get into narrative, but without being too pushy. Just kind of like, just when you go to social things, or when you're going for a drink of water, if you're in the studio, depends on whether you're remote or not. Obviously it's a bit more difficult with remote work, but just chat to people as you see them, as you encounter them. And this is the other thing. It's just quite often with kind of Slack and stuff, you'll have like creative writing social channels. So you might have like a poetry one, or you might have like a short story one, or whatever it is, and then just join those ones, and then just write your stories and your poems and that kind of stuff, and just blow people away. And like, oh, hello, they've written something really beautiful here. That's interesting. We should talk. So yeah, it kind of demonstrates to colleagues who work in narrative that you can write. But yeah, just be careful because obviously it can be read by anybody. So I've landed my first job in the studio. So yeah, just relax, focus, be professional. Plenty of time to show your genius. The priority at this point, when you're a junior, is to work to your brief and just show the studio that you can deliver what's expected. So rather than, it's always tempting to say, okay, I'm going to go above and beyond. I'm going to give them more. I'm going to do this and that and the other. But I think the first port of call is always just to absolutely nail that brief. Like the first few things that they just say, okay, let's do this. Just do them, without kind of pushing things. Just, you're in there, you're in the studio now, just show that you can just work to that brief. Respect the IP. So it might be that your first job isn't necessarily your dream project, but it will be for other people on the team. Quite often, most people in that studio will be proud of the game that they're working on. So if you need to, then it's just a case of kind of adapting to the project rather than trying to force your ideas onto it. And then obviously same with anything else, like just try and find those mentors, see who you click with, and then rinse them for answers, right? So senior team members love sharing knowledge, They love feeling important, and they do expect plenty of questions. And then, yeah, most importantly, like, be nice, be a team player. No role in games is solitary. It's all a big team effort. There's always just communication between different teams. Everything's constantly evolving. It's always constantly on fire to some extent and undergoing reiteration. So, yeah, make your days fun. And then I put this in last knockings just in case it was useful. Yeah, so just these are, if you go in at the very beginning, and this might be like a freelance thing, it might be like a studio-based thing, whatever, it might be that you get a team and they're like, okay, we're just going to make something. We've got a little bit of money. We're going to make a prototype. It might be like a vertical slice, which is like a version of a bigger game that's still workable and gives people a kind of opportunity to see what the game mechanics are. It might be that it's just a very limited game in terms of scope. But yeah, you will have, it might be even that actually they could be anywhere in this process. It could be the game itself, the dev team could be in pre-production, they could be in production, it could be post-release. And they might just, if you have a profile on Fiverr or whatever, or freelance website, it might be that they get to like quite far down the process, and then they're suddenly panicking and going, oh my goodness me, this, we've written it all and we thought it was absolutely fine, and now we realize that this narrative really needs a boost. What do we do? Oh dear. And then they'll get you in to do like a bit of polish. So just to kind of clarify what these things are, so conceptualizing like the pre-production thing, it's like kind of ideation, right? So it's like, what is this game about? Like, what is the whole idea behind this game? And then on top of that, it's going to be things like world building. So, where are we? Which is why this is why having those things in your portfolio is so important, because you're basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to cover all bases for things that they might require you to do when you come into their studio and work. So ideation, what's the game about? It's likely that whoever employs you will have an idea of this, but who knows? It might be that they just love your stuff and they just want to see what you can come up with. World building, where are we? Kind of character generation. So just who lives in this world? What are they doing? What makes them interesting? Scope those out. Have some fun with that. System creation. So what narrative systems are we going to be using? Is it a linear game? Is it a non-linear? Just how deep is this system going to get? Is it quite basic? And then storytelling, so kind of plotting, just trying to just figure out what is going to, just broad strokes, what is the, the beginning, the middle, and end, what are the general kind of plot points of this game. And then once you get into the kind of production stuff, then that's when you're implementing, right? So this is when you're going to be developing your narrative systems. You're going to be implementing those in Engine, potentially. Or you might be a games writer that's just working purely in Excel, but that Excel spreadsheet is still going to need populating. It's going to need creating and organizing. And then it's going to be populating with writing, with your writing. And that's a really exciting part of production, is actually just getting down and writing. And then post-release, it might be that there are bugs that you have to take care of. It might be that you're liaising with localization a bit and just working on some stuff. It might be that there are kind of questions from other locales and stuff. It might be that marketing, there's no marketing department for your game. It might be there's a small team and you're helping with the marketing copy as well. It might be that they're confident about the game and they're already thinking about DLC, and they need some ideas and some content for that. And I think that's it.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you very much, Mark. Comprehensive, really thorough. Not just to bring up some basic points, but to then really sit with those points and kind of talk through them and to kind of validate them through different stages and different angles, and to give everything the time that it needs to kind of be understood and things like that. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank you everyone in chat who's been just chatting alongside things, especially when it comes to game jams. I'm a big lover of game jams myself. And yeah, they're a fantastic subject, and there's easily a lot there that I could just sit down and we could easily just ramble on about, I'm sure, for minutes and minutes to come. But first thing I want to do is we've just hit the 2 o'clock mark. So the 2 o'clock mark. So what I want to do first is just check in with you, Mark. How are you doing for time? Do you have to rush off anywhere? Do we want to sit and take some questions? How are you doing?
Well, I mean, Slack is shut, so I have no idea if I'm in trouble or not. So let's just go with some questions. Yeah,
You can't be in trouble if you can't get the notification saying you're in trouble. That's the way it
exactly.
works.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Well, okay, great. We will take some questions. What I will do is, I'll leave the question slide up for us. Um, yeah, I mean, we've got one very clear question actually, which relates to something you were saying earlier. So what I'll
Mhm.
do is we'll just go straight in with that. And before we go as well, we'll do a quick thing with the narrative sprint course as well, because if you're sat there saying, Jonas, you promised a discount code, I did, but we'll get there. Okay, so Dan Tonkin asks, as an aspiring ND narrative designer, but trying to get in through QA or art, for example, how does this affect your portfolio and your approach to sort of job hunting? And I suppose there's a subject about there where it's like, can you, is it right to just have one portfolio that kind of shows like your entire relationship with games? Do you think it's worth fragmenting a portfolio so that
Mm,
they're all discipline specific? Yeah, just
yes.
generally, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if you're going to go for like a QA job, then it with a QA job, it's like okay, you understand kind of systems and you can like work through things methodically, and you're also just like you're selling your a big thing about QA, I think, is that you're selling yourself as a person, right? So I think that's it, like being personable and just making your cover letter and your CV geared towards a QA job. Like, don't worry about the narrative at all. Just just forget about it, and just get that job in. And then once you're in there and you're going through your bugs and that kind of stuff, then it's just like, oh, by the way, there's this thing, and then you just go up and you just like slide it under somebody's desk and just say, here's my narrative portfolio, by the way.
I've found as an addendum to that that talking to people in the games industry, I do these events and this community thing, but I've found that senior people take 5 minutes to try and understand who I am and what I want to achieve in the games industry. And I think that comes from a place of they're quite keen to find out if they can help me. They're quite keen to find out if there's anything they can do for me in that moment. And I
Mm,
think that's just largely how people work in games, is they
yeah.
recognize how hard it is to climb that ladder. But when they're in the room with you, they offer a hand down really quickly. Like the first thing they
Mm,
want to do is they want to be everyone wants to be the someone who opens the door for someone else. Everyone wants to be that helpful in that way because we all
mm.
know that it doesn't happen naturally, quickly, easily. So yeah, definitely like getting into a room where you can then tell people what it is you actually want to do
Yeah.
makes a
There is
big
an
difference.
expectation though, like it's not always the case. Like some people are just naturally QA and there's progression for that. There's career progression within QA. Like there's a hierarchy in lots and lots of studios where you work your way up to lead QA and and it's a difficult job and some people are just naturally very, very good at being that kind of, systematic about it. But there's also an expectation that for some people, QA will be that foot in the door, the same as the runner thing. So, like Jonas says, like on a kind of in the room thing, and when you're in the studio as well, there will be the expectation that you know you might potentially want to move on from QA to um, art, design, or audio or narrative.
Um, I'm just reading the next question and I'm getting ahead of some of the other questions as well. Good. Okay. We'll take what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two more questions and there's one question there that I'm actually going to reflect someone to the Intergames Discord because I think that's the answer to your question really.
Yes, yeah.
And then a very quick 2 minutes just to say if you're interested in the narrative sprint discount code, and then we'll wrap up. Managing expectations. There we go. Cool. Next question from Lucy Saskia says, what do you think is the most important thing or things to focus on for a narrative design portfolio? You mentioned about generalizing, but how do you go about not spreading yourself too thin? Where's the balance in that sort of, in that world?
Yes, I think it goes back to the kind of so I think a useful thing might be just say, okay, well, I'm just going to have a portfolio that's absolutely enormous, because one thing is that when you're like a professional paid writer, you are going to be writing a lot regularly. You're going to be expected to have a certain output. So it's not in your interest developmentally to sit on a portfolio anyway. I think you should be constantly creating and recreating stuff that you've got. Um, so, I would just say, okay, I've got lots and lots of different slides. Just, my PowerPoint's got like 50 slides in it or something. And then for this job, I think these 5 are the top ones for that, right? And then as part of your cover letter, you can just say, okay, here's a link to like a game or, HTML thing that I've knocked up in Twine. Click here and you can play through and you can see how I can organize narrative systems. And obviously, part of that will be your kind of CV that will just say, okay, I'm good in Engine, I can work in Unreal and Unity and the rest of it. So obviously make people aware of your like expertise in Engine and that kind of stuff. And just, show that you're prioritize your brilliance in writing and your ability to work with systems and direct them to something that you've made.
Nice, thank you very much. Now, for the next question, what I'll do is for you, Dana Liberto, who's asked, where do you find game development Discord servers? I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to say,
Yeah.
look, I have spent the last, like 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I think I had to go and locate something silly like like 70 video game Discord servers. So I have a list of them at the moment that exists in a place, and in the Intergames Discord server we already do quite a lot of referring people to other communities that are more specialized or more relevant to their interests. So what I would say is jump into the Intergames Discord server, click the link tree down below and there's a link to join the Discord server, and then from there, based on what it is you're interested in, I can either provide you with a bunch of invite links to different servers, or I can just tell you what I Googled to find a lot of those servers, because in reality, Googling did a lot for me. It was just kind of 3 hours of focused Googling different keywords into different websites. So hopefully that helps. But we'll take the last question related to this subject from Saturn Umbreon. Saturn Umbreon says, what's the best way to showcase yourself on LinkedIn? But I guess really what I want to do there is reflavor that as well, which is if I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, I'm scrolling through my own network or a bunch of people I don't know, at a glance, how can those people tell me that they are writers, that I want to hire or I want to pay for a project? Because in that context, I'm not looking at their portfolio yet. So like, what can you do? And I suppose this is true for any platform really, but it's like, what can you do to showcase that you have a portfolio worth looking at?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, well, you can kind of just, I mean, a lot of people in that, it's tricky, isn't it? Like in a junior position, so in a senior position, obviously you can provide kind of like tips and things and just say, okay, this is my thing. But would that land? I don't know. It's tricky, because you do need to. It's a tricky area, isn't it? Because you need to like express your kind of expertise and that kind of stuff. You obviously want to link through to your portfolio, so you need to have your portfolio accessible from your LinkedIn thing. I mean, one useful thing really is, I think, to be engaged with like chatting to people, not necessarily in like a kind of sycophantic way, but just, follow the right people and then just kind of emerge, not like just embroil yourself in the mix of those people. And when they kind of post stuff, obviously that's posting to their network. So just, connect with people and just give useful kind of insights and things, and you'll be amazed. Like your name just kind of keeps popping up and that kind of stuff, and you'll just kind of grow in a network, and then you can post kind of like just regular updates. If you're kind of doing your own, making your own games, going to game jams and that kind of stuff, and active within the industry, then every time one of those things happens or reaches some kind of milestone, then you can post about that and just be active.
I mean, I'm definitely like, I'm having a look at my LinkedIn now. I think one thing that jumps out at me is if people can be more specific about the type of writing they do, I think that excites me, because I want to know that someone's like a genre writer or a character writer, or someone's really confident about a specific flavor. But I think weirdly, yeah, the other thing as well is if I've seen your name around in conversations, if I've seen you participating in the dialogue with other
Yeah.
people in my network, then I'm probably going to
Mm.
be quite curious about you, which will lead me to look at your portfolio. So, yeah, I think that's kind of off the top of my head a follow up.
Yeah, don't be don't be scared to. I do apologize for my monotone today, but I'm very sorry about that.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to like connect with people and just like, but send them like a little message if you want to, and just say, oh hi, I love your stuff or whatever, or good to connect and that kind of stuff, and you know, just be friendly and just say hi.
Yeah, I think that about does it in terms of questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for the questions. As for the Discord servers, I need to. I've got a lot of work on my plate, but I will try and do it in a reasonable amount of time. Feel free to hassle me about it next week, but definitely not this week. The last thing that we're going to do, Mark, is a real quick shout out to. So one last time, you are going to be doing a masterclass as part of Kim McCaskill's narrative design sprint course, which is coming up in January. It starts on
Yes.
January the 6th and then goes on for the following 3 weeks. And you'll be able to take part. Like the course will run, I think it's like 6 till 8 on like Monday, Wednesday and Thursday or something like that. Like there are these live sessions that the Kim will come in and do, and you'll come in and do. And then in
Mm.
between those days, if you're taking part in the course, you'll be encouraged to spend time working on the draft or the piece or the what's it's not draft, is it? A brief, the brief that you've been given,
Yeah.
which eventually you'll turn into a portfolio piece.
So if you feel like you've got any kind of gaps in your knowledge, or you just need like a kind of energy boost, then it's absolutely invaluable. Both of those. It's amazing.
Um, and just in case you're still curious, there's a generic website. There's intergames.courses. This lets you look at all of the courses that we do. We're doing a narrative design one, but we're also doing a concept art one. We're doing a game design one that's about designing a environmental puzzle game. Rami Ishmael's doing a course about sort of business development and starting your own sustainable indie development studio. And I feel like there's one more, a squiggly one at the back of my brain, but I won't recall it right now. But what I will say is, if you're interested in the narrative design one, for coming to this event, you get given a code that will give you a little bit of cheeky dollar off. If you type narrative 15, the word narrative 15 in capital letters, narrative 15. That gives you 15% off of Kim's course. With all the courses, I believe we can do like payment plans as well, so you can chunk that down into smaller pieces. And if you yourself are from a low income or under resourced background, there's a page on the courses page. I think it's /affordability. You'll find it somewhere on the homepage. If you go to the affordability page, it talks about the different financial supports and bursaries that we put in place for anyone who needs to make the course more affordable for the reasons that we can support. So please do, like, if you're sort of hesitant, you're thinking, oh, it's just not a good time, check it out, bookmark it, just keep it in your back pocket. Maybe at Christmas, your favorite auntie will say to you, I just want to buy you an educational experience on the internet that will help your games career, darling. And you'll say, well, I got just the thing, because Jonas wouldn't stop talking about it in that live stream, etc. Thanks everyone for joining us. Mark, before we go, is there anything else, any final words of wisdom, anything you want to plug? Maybe you can just tell us all to go buy PowerWash Simulator. But yeah, anything else on the top of your mind that you want to get away with?
Um, no, that's it. But yeah, just best of luck, everybody. And just keep going, and obviously like connect with me on LinkedIn and things and say hi.
Beautiful stuff. Okay, I think that brings it to a close. Thanks for everyone for joining us. If you're watching us live, that means that it's a Thursday. We're going to be back next Tuesday on this channel. We're going to be doing the big event of the year, which is where we sit down with Rare, the game studio that are making Fable. And we're going to be doing a I just said Fable when I meant Sea of Thieves, and I think I keep mixing this up. I'm sure I keep mixing this up. Too many damn pirates. We're going to be sitting down with Rare, and they've got 5 internships open at the moment, and those internships are open for application, I think, until the end of the year or early January. And what we do with these events we're hiring is we just sit down with them and we interview a couple of their current interns, like the interns that they hired last year, and we talk to their hiring managers, and we just ask them like, what's it like? How do you be a good intern? How does one apply for the intern good? Etc. etc. And yeah, it's really insightful. It's really cool because it's kind of the most insight we will ever get to like sort of a AAA studio's hiring practices, you know, especially one that's nice and local in the UK, and Rare put a lot of effort into demystifying their process. So if you haven't already signed up for it, it's going to be a big one. It's happening next week on Tuesday, and we've still got the sign-ups all available. Again, link in the and you'll be able to sign up. That's it for now, really. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You're all lovely. Have a great weekend, everyone, and treat yourself to your favourite warm beverage. That's all for now. Bye-bye.